All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I want to welcome you on behalf of Mountain States Policy Center and Idaho Kids Win to our Boise Town Hall meeting. If you're just coming in the doors, there's a few seats up front. There's a couple of seats up front here if you are looking for a seat. I'm Chris Cargill with Mountain States Policy Center. It's a great privilege to be able to be here to talk with you a little bit about the new Parental Choice Tax Credit here in Idaho. The way this evening is going to work is that we are going to explain a little bit what the Parental Choice Tax Credit is, how you can sign up, go through some of the most frequently asked questions, have a few comments from our panelists who we will introduce here in a couple of minutes, and then get to your questions and answers as soon as possible. We understand that this is a really passionate issue from a lot of different people, so our goal here today is not to necessarily debate the issue, but rather to try to answer questions about how it works and help parents who are interested in signing up. So to get started today, we're going to show you this short video.
No one knows what's best for a child more than their parents. From the moment they're born, we begin to learn who they are and what makes them unique. We know them inside and out. We understand what they need to thrive, especially when it comes to their education. Some students flourish in their local public school. Other students need a private school or homeschool to prepare them for a winning future. We believe that when parents are empowered to choose the right education for their children, every Idaho kid wins. And now they can, thanks to Idaho's new Parental Choice Tax Credit. Idaho's Parental Choice Tax Credit is worth $5,000 per student or $7,500 for students with special needs. This credit can be used for private school tuition or even homeschool expenses. Every Idaho student is eligible, but credits will be awarded on a first-come, first-served basis. So go to idahokidswin.com today to learn more and start the registration process.
So hopefully everyone had the chance to pick up a lot of the materials that are out in the lobby. If for no other reason, then we don't have to haul them back to our office. So make sure to grab some more before you leave tonight and pass them out to family and friends, including a 4-inch by 9-inch card. Hopefully everyone saw that, and we'll have Marcel come in and pass them out if you haven't seen it. That explains the process of applying for the Parental Choice Tax Credit. So let's talk a little bit about the public support for this. There's been a lot of information out there about whether the public supports this or not. The polling that we have done at Mountain States Policy Center is pretty overwhelming. When this was talked about late last year, we conducted a poll and asked parents in Idaho if they would support a $5,000 tax credit that parents could use if they didn't send their child to a public school. When we did that poll last December, 66% supported that concept. A poll was just completed here in the past few weeks as well that shows 65% support the Parental Choice Tax Credit. So that is the polling that has been most recent completed here in the state. Each of these polls have a margin of error of plus or minus 3 percentage points. So what is H93? H93 is what's being called the nation's best education choice law, where families can take a $5,000 tax credit to help cover the cost of homeschooling, tutoring, therapies, private school tuition, and other educational expenses. Special needs students are eligible of up to $7,500. The program is capped. It's a $50 million cap. So basically it just runs until they run out of money. Families are basically served on a first-come, first-served basis. What all qualifies? If you're trying to find out, okay, does this qualify, does it not qualify? Here are essentially the 7 main categories: curriculum, tutoring, nationally standardized tests, college assessments, textbooks, transportation, and private school tuition. How do you go about applying? Again, Marcel will hand out the cards to everyone if you do not have a copy of them, but it's essentially a 5-step process. The first thing you need to do is file your taxes. Simple as that. You want to make sure that your taxes have been filed by November 1st. This is your 2024 taxes and going forward. If you haven't filed your taxes, it's going to be very difficult, basically impossible, for you to get the credit. The second thing you need to do is you need to create what's called a TAP account. And that can be done on the state's tax commission's website. So it's very simple. You just go on there. It'll walk you through the process of how you create a TAP account. If you have a business TAP account, that does not qualify. You need to create your own individual TAP account. The third thing you need to do is you need to begin saving receipts for qualified expenses. Fourth thing, and these are specific dates, so I would want to make sure that everyone is writing them down if you are interested in applying. You want to make sure that you're ready to apply by January 15th. As we mentioned, this is first come, first serve, and if you do not apply on January 15th, and thousands and thousands and thousands of other families apply, it's going to be on a first come, first serve basis. So if you're really interested in the program, you need to make sure you apply as soon as possible, starting January 15th. And then finally, you'll receive official notification from the state's tax commission after April 15th, the tax filing deadline. Here are a few of the most frequently asked questions that we are getting, and of course you may have other questions as well. Do I need to be an Idaho resident to qualify? Yes, you need to be an Idaho resident, and your child needs to be an Idaho resident as well, full-time Idaho residents. Is there a limit on how many children can get the credit? No. You'll only need to submit one application for all kids. Let's say you have 2 kids in the house, you can submit one application for both kids. What if my student takes a class or participates in an activity at a public school? If they participate in any class or activity, including sports, and they are officially enrolled, therefore, you cannot claim the credit. There's a little bit of nuance to that we'll get into here this evening, but you'll want to make sure that you're checking with your local school districts and make sure that they're not officially enrolled. Are there reporting requirements? Yes, you will only need to complete a survey that is administered by the state's Legislative Services Office. So as a parent, you'll need to make sure that you complete that survey. There are other questions as well that are being asked. I hope everyone had the chance to take the FAQs sheet that's out there. If you haven't, go ahead and grab one before you leave tonight. It's also available on idahokidswin.com if you're interested in asking more questions. You can do that, and our staff will try to respond within 24 hours to you to make sure that you're kept up to date on and have your questions answered as well. So I want to introduce our 3 panelists and then give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have. Our first panelist is Senator Lori Den Hartog, who is the Senate Majority Leader and represents District 22. She earned her BA in Business Administration and Public Administration as well. Representative Jason Monks is the House Majority Leader, also representing District 22. District 22 well represented here tonight. He earned a BS from Brigham Young University. And finally, Joey Magana is the VP of Policy and Advocacy at EdChoice and is a graduate of Oklahoma Baptist University. So please welcome all of our panelists here today. I'm going to turn it over to our panelists to give us maybe a 5 minutes opening comments and what they're looking forward to talking about here tonight, and then we'll get to your questions. Senator?
I feel like I have to lean forward so I can see some of these folks on the other side of it. Thank you all so much for being here. Really the goal of tonight, we know we have opportunities from the Tax Commission has been providing webinars to try to answer questions for parents and families as they consider whether or not to apply for the tax credit. And so we're trying to just give other opportunities. I know a lot of the events that the Tax Commission has hosted have been filling up. So we're planning to go around the state, and we have different panelists who are going to be part of that as we go across the state to try to answer questions for parents. So really, we want to be as helpful as possible. There may be some specific questions that you have unique to you and your family circumstances that we may not be able to answer. but rest assured, we'll be going back to the tax commission as those who helped craft the policy. We've been working with tax commission staff on implementation, making sure that good information gets out to families. So we're really excited about this opportunity, and we hope a lot of families will be able to benefit. And yeah, just glad to be here tonight. Thank you.
Representative Muntz.
Thank you. And thank you guys for coming here. I appreciate it. It's always good to see people interested in education for either their children or for the citizens of Idaho. It's always encouraging to know that people are concerned about that. That's one of the reasons why I was so adamant about working towards this goal here. I just want better results for all of our kids. But I think it's very, very important to make sure that you understand this House Bill 93 was not an indictment of regular public school. This was not an either or. This is a both. This is just what works best for your particular situation. Not every kid learns the same, does as well. This just is another opportunity or another option. That's all this is. And so that's one of the reasons that I was involved in this process and wanted to provide literally the best education for all of our kids here in Idaho. And we think that this is another tool that is available for parents to be able to help educate their children. And we're excited about the prospects of it and what it can do, and for your kids.
So I'm Joey. First and foremost, I'd like to say, why am I here? Why do I advocate for school choice? Why do I work for EdChoice? So how many of you are millennials in this room? Okay, a couple. We're slowly trying to run the world, but so I'm a typical millennial, which means, generally speaking, my parents are divorced. My mom and I moved from Texas to Arkansas to be with my grandparents. I got enrolled in local public junior high. A little bit of a drug problem there that kind of scared my mom, but we didn't have the means to do anything different. So my grandparents came out of retirement, got part-time jobs to put me into a private school. That's why I'm here. So I love to advocate for folks who need the option, need the opportunity for whatever reason. That's why I'm here. So I like to say that. So you saw a lot of our books up front. They're smaller books, but it's packed with a lot of information. And if you want more information on these topics, we've got much thicker books you can look at. But edchoice.org is our website. So just to give you a quick kind of snapshot of school choice across the country, 34 states have some form of school choice. There's 75 different programs, and there's about 1.3 million students across the country using a school choice program. So that kind of gives you kind of a snapshot around the country. Speaking of snapshot, there's the school choice snapshot, which is this yellow book. It kind of describes what the school choice programs are across the country. So you've heard of vouchers, education savings accounts, now tax credits. This kind of goes into detail about that. Then there's the legal landscape. So school choice has been litigated for a very long time in this country, going back to the early 1900s. So there's one in particular that I always like to point out. It's a case back in 1925. It's Pierce versus Society of Sisters of the Holy Names of Jesus and Mary. And basically this was a court case in Oregon where Oregon said kids have to go to a public school. It's kind of a compulsory act. But some kids were going to this Catholic school, and so it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, this is a quote from their decision, "The child is not the mere creature of the state. Parents are in control of their child's education, and they get to choose where they want to go." So there's all kinds of court cases like that out there. There's the Physical Fact book. I'm sure some of you have heard about the kind of physical effects of school choice. This kind of goes into detail on that, and some of the public side of spending as well. Then there's the research review, which we have a book called The 1, 2, 3s. Yes, I know it's very educational, but this goes into all the research of school choice. You'd be hard pressed to find in the realm of education a more researched topic of school choice. There are, it's right in here actually, there's a total of 203 studies. 175 of them have positive effect, 20 have neutral, and 15 have negative effect. And yes, we show that because we want to be honest in our research. And these are all academic peer-reviewed research studies. So you can go into that. And then there's a polling primer. So we started polling, EdChoice was started back in 1996. We have polling all the way back from there, and it shows mostly positive things. But we poll the general public, we poll parents, we poll Black families, we poll teachers, we poll everybody. And one thing about our polling that I'll say is we're a part of a polling association. It's American Association of Public Opinion Research. There's a transparency initiative that we're a part of, which basically means, because I'm sure you've all have encountered this, you can throw a poll out there to kind of say what you want it to say, but we're part of an initiative that shows all the crosstabs of who we ask, how we ask, what we ask, so that you can determine for yourself, based on how we ask it, what the results were. Because we generally want to know where parents are at on these issues, or other groups of people. We generally know, when you hear about school choice, what do you think? If you had the opportunity to send your kid to another option, an educational option, what do you think about? So there's all that stuff in there too. I think that's it.
All right, thank you to the three of you, and we are turning the program over to you now. That is the intention of the town hall, is to allow you to ask any questions and get your questions hopefully answered. And if we don't have the answers here tonight, we will try to get the answers for you as quickly as possible. Marcel, right up here, wait, Marcel, he's going to be the mic master, so to speak. So he's going to come around the room, bring the mic to you. Once we do, please tell us who you are, where you're from, and then we will answer any questions that you might have. You got the mic, right, Marcel?
This one. Thank you.
All right, please raise your hand if you have a question. We'll go to the very back first. We're going to make sure Marcel gets his workout tonight.
Make him run for it.
And then
Yeah.
Well, we only have one, unfortunately.
Thanks, Diane. I'm from Nampa. Is the application going to be?
Yes, so the application, families will be required to apply every year for the tax credit because it could, as your kids grow, and I see you've got a little one in your arms, obviously, you know how they grow, your tax situation could change, and obviously the age of your kids could change. And so each year you would be required to reapply that same time frame, starting that January 15 of each year is the beginning of the application period. The law is written such that if you receive it in the first year, based on the other criteria, we have there's priority for families with income levels at 300% of the federal poverty level or less. And then families who receive it the first year will receive priority when they apply in subsequent years. But yes, you will have to reapply each year. And then part of that year 2 application is what Chris had mentioned, which is the survey that's required. That survey is being developed. It's primarily to get an understanding of how satisfied or dissatisfied parents might be with the different educational choices that they have made or use the tax credit for that purpose. So you have to, in order to qualify for year 2, you have to make sure you complete that survey before applying for year 2. And that will be communicated to the families that apply.
And 50 million for the budget will accommodate 10,000 students. And that 10,000 students, 10,000 will be prioritized for that AGI. So if 20,000 and there's 5,000 who maybe applied at first, that exceeds that AGI will
Correct. So families, it won't be quite 10,000 kids because we have some administrative costs for the tax commission to administer the program. And we also don't know how much each family will be awarded. So the amounts are up to $5,000 and up to $7,500 if your child is a student with disabilities. And it's based on your actual expenses. So if your actual expenses are $3,000, you would only be awarded a tax credit for $3,000. So it's not a blanket amount, but it just has those caps at $5,000 and $7,500. So that will also, again, depending on the mix of students that apply, the types of costs that families are experiencing, because some of our families that homeschool, their costs are going to look different or could look different than families that are paying tuition at a private school. So it's a rough number. So you're right.
I'm going to ask Meg, who's our education director, Meg Gowdy right here. Go ahead and wave, Meg. I'm going to ask her to see if we can look up the adjusted gross income for family four, where that would hit for the 300%. Maybe Senator or Representative, do you know what off the top of your head what that number is? Jason's going to find out here in a second. Meg will double check as well. So that way everyone knows what numbers we're talking about here.
So 300% federal poverty, again, family size matters. So if it is a family of two, 300% federal poverty would be $61,320. Family of four, up to $93,000. So, but again, if you have more kids, I didn't tell you what one would be because one doesn't have a kid that goes to school. So, single mom and one child, that would be two. So they could make up to $66,000. That's your federal poverty level, and that's just get prioritization of that. If nobody applied and somebody made more, then yeah, they could get it. But the prioritization is set for the lowest income first.
And typically what we've seen in the other states, Indiana's median household income of those participating is about 82,000, and Arizona's right now is about 61,000. So it kind of gives you an idea of the areas that is the average household income of those participating. We'll go to the next question. Want to go right here in the yellow?
Yes, my name is Marcia, and I live in Garden City. And as a retired educator, I've seen firsthand what underfunding our public schools means for the day-to-day experience of our kids. So do you foresee in this program impacting our ability to adequately fund public schools for the coming year and far beyond?
No, not at all. In fact, just in the last several years, and not to say there's not been a legislator who has put more money into public education than who's sitting up here right now. We had a bill just a couple years ago that put an additional $1 billion into public education. We also were supportive of the bill that added an additional $400 million sales tax, direct sales tax into that just recently. The years that we've been there, we've been able to fund public education in the greatest increases across the board have always gone to public education. Even when we've had declining enrollment, we have increased public education funding tremendously. I believe West Data, a lot of people here in West Data or your Boise or whatever there, with that bill that we passed for funding, I think West Data got over $200 million that we added to their budget just recently. So I don't see a $50 million program affecting that at all. There's plenty of other programs that we spend a lot more money on that I would say could potentially affect it more. Medicaid expansion, the costs on that are skyrocketing much more than we ever anticipated or anybody said that they would cost. They're about 3-4 times what we were told it would cost, and that is affecting our bottom line. So, there's things that we have to pay for, but I think Idaho has done a fantastic job of always providing for that, and I don't see that changing.
And I'll just add, part of the reason we structured the program the way that we did is we studied other states and looked what other states were doing. You probably have heard stories from some of those states, but it was intentional to cap the program at 50 million so we would know what the costs would be. And that was really important to us as policymakers, because we've seen other programs that have been put into law where the cost is open-ended, and we come in having to set the state budget and are seeing things that we're required to pay for by state law that don't have any kind of monetary cap. And so it was really intentional, and we know that it creates some potential hardships for families that are interested in applying, because you don't know whether or not you'll receive it because it's not open-ended, and it is that first come, first served nature. So the dollar amount is 50 million, and it won't be any more than that for the foreseeable future.
And just comparatively speaking, the amount that we're spending right now in the K-12 budget in Idaho is roughly 2.8 billion. And as the representative and senator indicated, this program is 50 million. So we're talking about 0.0185% if you're comparing the two of those. Marcel, do you want to come up here on this side? And then we'll come up to you, sir. Sure, you can go.
Thank you. My name is Greg Feldman. I live in Meridian. And I have a question regarding accountability for the people that receive the tax credit. Do they have to prove test scores or any kind of, other than the survey is all I've heard about, that shows the students are achieving growth like the public schools are expected to?
That was something that we debated a lot as far as the accountability measures, as far as what we would do and what we wouldn't do. I would ask just some questions, thought-provoking questions here. We do testing in public schools. I can show you a litany of public school officials across the country and in Idaho that are adamantly opposed to standardized testing, from the top down to the bottom. And did we want to add that there? And so the question, though, is what is a good education, right? Are we making sure that it's a good education? I would argue that nobody is a better judge of that than the parents. I have full faith in the parents' ability to make the decisions. Currently, they don't have that accountability. So currently, if my kid goes to a school and they get bad test results there, there's no accountability. I don't get to change. We don't cut the funding because of that.
We're gonna
and again,
go around.
And again, we're here to help people administer the program, and we know that people came here specifically to try to criticize the program, and that's okay. We'll take your questions, but the reality is there is nobody better than a parent to determine whether or not they have a good education. And I have full faith in the parent to say, if I don't think that my kid is getting a good enough education at this school, that they can take their dollars and they can go somewhere else. That's the best accountability I think you'll find anywhere.
And I'll just add, for the eligible expenses, if a family chooses a non-traditional school that isn't accredited, so there is a requirement to either be an accredited private school, or there's an option for a non-accredited school, and then families are required to keep a portfolio of evidence of learning and student learning growth. And there is accountability in terms of the spending, so parents have to track what their expenses are, and that's under a penalty of, it's a felony if you lie on your taxes. So we think that is a pretty significant accountability measure for parents. And if a parent is shown to misuse the funds or not spend it appropriately, then they are permanently ineligible to apply for the tax credit.
Joey, anything you want to add on this particular point?
So most school choice, almost all of them have some form of accountability, whether it's a survey or a national reference test or showing a portfolio of math, science, reading, social studies, which I think is a part of this as well. The only state that doesn't is Arizona. They don't require any type of reporting. But there was a Stanford study done just a couple of years ago that showed academic growth in the state of Arizona is far and beyond any other state in the country. So there's lots of evidence and research, again, that I'll point to in our stuff that shows standardized testing is not a good measure. And to his point, we hear from teachers all the time, it's in our polling as well, that they would rather get rid of testing. They would rather do something competency-based or some other different type of testing. So,
okay, right up here.
My name is Stephen Post. This is my wife, Amy. We are from Middleton. Just first off, let me say thank you for the presentation and allowing us to My question is, we have a daughter that attends just one class at the high school. The rest of the time she's homeschooled and the rest of her kids are homeschooled. As she goes to the high school for a class, does that mean she is completely exempt from any credit? And then does that mean the other kids are exempt?
If your daughter attends a class at the public high school, she would be considered enrolled and would not be eligible. Your other kids who are not enrolled in the public school are eligible. So just because you have one student taking one class doesn't disqualify the whole family. There is a question, and Chris brought it up in his presentation, and I'll address it here in case other families are facing similar circumstances. We've had a question about homeschool students who participate only in sports and not some kind of academic class that they would be enrolled in. What we've learned as we've been working with the Tax Commission and the State Board of Education is that some of our school districts are handling those students differently in terms of their record keeping. So some school districts have it clear that if a student is just doing sports, they're not considered enrolled. Other school districts are treating those students differently, and it's not nefarious or anything, it's just what they've been doing. And so we've been working with the State Board of Education. They have worked out what's called a memorandum of understanding with the Tax Commission that when families apply for the tax credit and the Tax Commission is trying to figure out whether or not these students are eligible, whether or not they've been enrolled, they're going to have communication between the Tax Commission and the State Board. They'll ping the State Board and say, is this student enrolled in a public school? And the State Board will give them information back. So they've been working out some of the details on that. I did hear last week the Tax Commission had done a webinar, and they had indicated and I wasn't able to listen to that one, so I don't know exactly what was said, but this is something we're gonna go back and kind of hash out with them. So it's still a little murky in terms of what advice the Tax Commission has given around kids who are participating in sports. But from our perspective in help crafting the legislation, we weren't trying to exclude those kids from the program. But in order to make it clear that we weren't double funding a student in a public school and qualifying for the tax credit, that's why we did that clean break. And part of that is we have a very, very complicated school funding formula, and the only way districts are able to differentiate between their students is a part-time versus a full-time student in terms of the state funding formula. So a student who takes just one class is considered a part-time student. And so that's part of some of just the nuances on the background on that.
We brought homeschool. I just want to point out something. It's said, but we can't say it enough, I guess. Sometimes you, as a parent who's homeschooling your kids, you do not qualify to receive money to educate your own child. Meaning, you can't invoice yourself. I charge $2,000 for the school year to educate my child, and so you wouldn't have that part wouldn't be available. But if you bought school books, that would be an expense that you could qualify for that tax credit. Again, your expenses might not exceed several $100s, and that's it. And so that goes back to that original question that we had as far as how many students. Well, we don't know, because if you have a lot of homeschools that just decide they want a couple books as part of their credit, well, that's fine. But again, you can't charge to educate your own children. So that was something we were very particular about as well in the legislation. We wanted to make sure that people didn't just kind of take advantage of the situation there. Okay, Marcel?
First of all, thank you guys for being here tonight. I appreciate it. My name is Katie Horner. I live in District 22. I'm a Gen Xer. When I heard about this, I kind of felt like I missed the boat. I put 5 of my kids through private school. They all went to the Catholic schools, Bishop Kelly High School. I myself am a graduate of Bishop Kelly High School. I did all of that. I prioritized that, and I never asked the state to subsidize my choice to prioritize my kids' private school education. So I have a 2-part question. Am I to understand that I potentially could have basically paid $25,000 this upcoming tax year with my 5 kids, probably high school. And two, if I bring all of that home, is it also then taxable at the federal level as income? I know Idaho wouldn't tax it as a refund credit, but am I then obligated to include it as part of my taxable income on my federal return the following year? Thank you for your time.
I don't believe the amount counts as income for your federal taxes. You are correct. The legislation is drafted such that we have it specifically stated that it doesn't count as income in Idaho. And again, it's up to you as the parent whether or not you want to apply for the credit. No one's going to make you apply for the credit. So, you know, if you have decided, so same thing. I've stated publicly and on the Senate floor and in committee. My kids attend Nampa Christian. I'm a graduate of Nampa Christian. Same thing. We've prioritized a faith-based education in our house, and that was really important 15 years ago when we started, when our son entered kindergarten. So it's up to, and I stated publicly, I won't be applying for the tax credit. We're going to continue doing what we've been doing as a family. But we had, in understanding the types of expenses that families may experience depending on how many kids that they have in the house, we debated, honestly, as policymakers, whether or not we should have a cap on the number of kids in a household who could apply, and ultimately decided it's really not up to us in terms of, you know, how people have decided to structure their families, how many kids they decide to have, what they decide to do for their kids' education. I know I have friends who have 5 kids, and they've kind of done everything. They've got some in private, some in public, they homeschooled some, and it actually just has continued to evolve over time depending on what's best for their kids in that year.
Go ahead. Yeah, Marcel.
Alex, Boise. I just wanted to ask about, so in the last legislative session, there was not a lot of funding increases to special education. And I work with in special education, and I kind of want to know what choices there are for parents with special education students, and is there a way to make sure that these kids can be accepted by the available options?
Yeah. So we do recognize that kids with special education needs require more funding. The other thing too that I would point out, and this kind of just tags on a little bit, you know, $5,000. If you look across the board at private schools, and again, that's what gets a lot of the focus. My focus is not on private schools. My focus is on micropods or homeschool. That's where I think the benefit is. But that tuition is usually more than $5,000. And so we knew that, and we wanted people to have a little skin in the game, that if you wanted to send your child there, you would still have to, you know, potentially come up with a little bit. Maybe the K through 3 or 4, you might be able to get it for that. But when you start getting above that, most of the private schools require much more than that. And people have to sacrifice in order to do that, or prioritize, I guess. And so with the $5,000, we also recognize that kids with special needs require a little bit more. And so we bumped that level up to $7,500 to allow that additional income. And I'll just, being that this is kind of the first time we've talked a little bit about micropods and how that looks. I have a child that's gone through public school, children that have gone through public school, charter schools, and private. But the private is done through a micropod. Essentially, it is a neighbor that during COVID, they wanted their kids to go to a school, and they co-op together. There was 3 or 4 families that got together, sent their kids all to somebody's house who had some room and had a well-educated mother who decided she wanted to teach, and they brought in other experts as well, other teachers as well, to help educate. I ended up sending one of my children to that micropod because that's what worked best for my child at the time, and she's still there. And again, that works for us as far as what we needed. And of my children, I have 4 biological, 4 adopted. All 4 adopted have special needs. Some have been in extended resource class all day. Some just go there a little bit. Some have just a little bit of extra help with some IEPs. So I'm very familiar with the needs associated with with children like that. So we were aware of that, and we tried to make some accommodations for it. Does that mean that we've solved that problem? Absolutely not. But we recognize that yes, there's additional resources required for those types of children. And I moved my children around from elementary school to a charter school, and then to another elementary school to find the best fit that I could. And again, we were in a situation that we could do that. Living in West Ada, there was multiple opportunities. The state's not like that, though. The state doesn't have West Ada that's got 20 different elementary schools. And so this program was tried to be put together to where it could help for other people. So in Oakley, Idaho, they don't have a private school, but maybe somebody wanted to put together a micropod, and maybe that's what they wanted to do. And this is something that we tried to craft to where that would be beneficial for them. So yeah, definitely requires more resources for those kids, and we recognize that.
I'll just say, the modern school choice movement started in Milwaukee as a voucher program for inner city kids, but most of the statewide school choice programs started as special needs programs. So there's a valid question out there of where do these kids go if they're not going to their public school? And the answer is there's several places they can go. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Arizona, Florida, they all started as special needs programs, and it worked so well, and I think parents were seeing the success of it that's why it's kind of expanded further out to other students.
And I think it's important to point out before we get to some more questions here. The tax credit that we're talking about here does not go to any particular school. It goes to families. So just like the grocery tax credit goes to you, it doesn't go to the grocery store. This tax credit goes to you. It does not go to any private school. It can be used for any of these items that are on the screen as well. Go ahead, Marcel.
I'm Ralph. I'm from Mountain Home. I have two separate questions. The first one deals with the residency requirement. We have a very high military population in Mountain Home. Some of them are Idaho residents, and then they leave here, but they maintain their residency. So if they leave here and they maintain their residency under federal law, them and their spouse and their kids, are they still able to qualify if they homeschool or they put them in a private school in Alaska to get this tax credit from Idaho?
I'm going to take a stab and then maybe follow up with you and talk with the tax commission, because I don't know if we've talked about the military families. The kids also have to be residents, so both the parents and the students have to count as Idaho residents. Can I get your information and follow up with you? Because I haven't heard the tax commission answer that particular question.
So President Obama signed that in law, that the family is able to maintain their residency upon PCS. So it's the spouse and the children. They may not reside in Idaho, but they are Idaho residents. For example, I was a South Dakota state resident for 14 years living in Idaho along with my wife. And so these military families, as long as they're active duty, can live all over the country or the world and maintain their residency, but they don't reside in Idaho. So would they still qualify maintaining that residency in Florida, Alabama, wherever they are, Europe, and going and putting their kids in an online private school or homeschooling, wherever they're at, is the question.
Yeah, and they would also have to be filing Idaho taxes, so it's two-part if they're residents and filing Idaho taxes. But I'll follow up with the tax commission on that specific example.
Okay, we'll go up here to this lady in black. And
then we've got
okay. Yeah, and we'll come back to you after that.
Hi, I'm Elaine. I'm from Boise. I just don't feel like some of the questions have been fully answered, so I wanted to actually follow up on a few questions. So first, with the special needs, the question was like, is there anything in this law that was passed that basically she's trying to ask, I'm sorry if I'm misquoting you, that requires private schools to follow the same rules as public schools when it comes to admission. She referenced it to, special needs, but that's like an overarching question. Do they have to follow the same rules?
So no, they do not, but a lot of private schools offer services for kids with special needs. And I was trying to Google and look, there's a school that I'm thinking of that is in existence in North Idaho that is specific to serving kids with learning disabilities. And it's a private school, it's all that they do, and I can't think of the name of it right now. So to answer your question, no, it doesn't change the requirements for what private schools set for entrance. But again, the focus is on parents choosing what location and what school or what educational setting provides the services that they need for their kids.
I mean, we can go into a philosophical debate, I'm not going to. I would rather focus on Bishop Kelly Mom's question. I don't think it was really drawn out there. Like, if she's 5 kids, $25K potentially in returns. What if she only owed like $10K in taxes? Is she making money off of this program though?
I wouldn't classify it as making money because she has to have incurred the actual expense. So she's paying for her.
So again,
Yeah, this isn't a debate. This isn't a debate about the merits of the legislation.
Right.
We're trying to answer questions for families.
and so that debate, thank you. Right, that is the debate that we had during the legislative session. So we're here tonight to help parents who might be interested in participating in the program. So again, we'd be glad to debate this during the legislative session. We did debate this during the legislative session, and again, we understand that there's a lot of passion about this particular program, but tonight we're here to help parents who might be interested in participating.
I am interested, but I just am concerned it's not fiscally responsible.
Okay, well, it's
Then
capped
don't
at
apply.
$50 million, so we'll go back here. All the way to the back, I think there's a.
So I think I'm going to answer your question because I think the answer is pretty clear. It's a tax credit. It is not income. Okay, so I think we need to go back to the accounting and finance here. So it's not possible that you're going to make $25,000. Okay, you're submitting expenses for educational purposes to be reimbursed, and you report them as expense on your taxes. It's not income. Okay, I think some folks maybe want to talk to their accountant. Or if they don't have an account, you can look it up, go to any IRS piece that you would like. But again, this is not income. It's not possible to answer your question that you're going to get a $25,000 set of income. You're going to report your expenses, and you're going to get a tax credit, but that's not income. So I mean, I don't understand the question.
Thank you.
That was an answer, not a question.
Go ahead, right here in the room. There you go.
Hi, my name is Diana. I'm from Boise.
Yes.
Actually, I would love something that, like a single mom, if she makes money on it, it's totally fine with me. I have friends who really use this, and they couldn't come to it. So my question is there somewhere online, somewhere we can direct those parents who are like at the property line to get the information to make sure everyone's the same?
So 2 places, actually maybe 3 places. So there's the IdahoKidsWin.org website that .com. Thank you. Sorry. The Idaho State Tax Commission has a website, and then they have the My School Choice. They have a more parent-friendly one, myschoolchoice.idaho.gov, that has some of the FAQs, some of the timeline for when families need to apply. And I believe both websites have places that if families have specific questions unique to their circumstances, they can submit questions. So the tax commission, this is one of the complicating factors, is that everyone's tax situation is a little bit different. And so, the tax commission is doing the best that they can to try to answer those specific questions. But to the gentleman's point, some of these families might need to consult with an accountant. So those 2 websites would be the best resource. And then, if they have other questions, and we're in communication with tax commission staff, with Chris's staff, trying to answer these questions for families.
As we mentioned, you are welcome at any time to go onto IdahoKidsWin.com and submit a question. If you're laying in bed tonight, you think about a question that you need answered, go onto IdahoKidsWin.com, submit the question. We'll try to get it answered within 24 hours if we possibly can. I'm going to ask everyone who's already asked a question to wait until we've kind of circled through the room. Go ahead, Marcel.
So I'm Cheryl. I live in Star. I have actually had my daughter go to a private school since I moved out here. My question is my daughter's a junior and she's in the middle of school, and I know this whole enrollment doesn't start till January 15th by her. How does that work with, or what's the process, I guess, once you apply? How soon would you find out? Because I know that me applying next year is perfectly fine because she'll be a senior by the time she graduates. She finishes this year, but then next year when it starts in January 15th again, she'll almost be finishing school. So how does that go into play?
All right, so this is where it gets really complicated and sometimes we get confused. So, and we had this many times. We've drawn out many charts when we were working on the legislation because we have school year, calendar year, tax year. So the important thing to remember, and this was a policy decision as we crafted the legislation because of how the interplay between the tax year and the school year doesn't work. So when you apply, if you choose to apply for your daughter's, for the costs that you've incurred, it would be for your costs that you've incurred this current calendar year of 2025, which covers a spring semester and a fall semester over two different school years, right? So it would be, and that's kind of the unique part of the tax credit, is it's looking in arrears at your expenses. It's not anticipating. No one's had a question yet about the advance payment. There is an option that's a little more complicated for families who can't afford to incur that expense and then wait to get the tax credit the following year when they file their taxes. So you could do that for both of those school years. It may not apply for all of the years and the semesters left that she has in schooling, depending on how that works out.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm from Eagle, Idaho. Lived here all my life. If a student and their parents are Idaho residents and pay taxes in Idaho, but their parents want their kid to attend an out-of-state prep school, like Seattle Arts and Sciences or something like that, could they use the tax credit for tuition for that out-of-state school?
The answer is this: the students have to be residents. We do have an online option, so if the student is out of state, I don't recall if you said if it was an online program or not. If it's in
So if they want to attend, like, whether or not the program is based in Idaho, like if it's an out-of-state program like Seattle Art and Sciences, for example, whether they're taking it online or in person, would they be able to use it for an out-of-state program?
Yes, I believe so. Because again, the focus is on the parents making the decision about what education their child is receiving. So it's not specific to the school. But the students, this is why they have to be, the parents have to be residents, the students have to be residents, they have to be dependents, the parents have to be filing Idaho taxes and paying taxes in Idaho.
And I think the online component of that is important because there are some online schools that are not necessarily based in Idaho, but they may be an online school that the family may want to choose.
Hi, my name's Carly, and we have 4 kids, 3 biological, 1 adopted, and we have chosen to put our children in a private school, and I know that that is our choice, and we save all year long to pay the fee for it, and we continue to do that regardless of where this credit falls. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to apply for it. We're looking forward to it. We'll see what happens. But my question is, it was mentioned earlier that there's documentation required for non-accredited schools. The school that they attend is a small, private, non-accredited school. What kind of documentation is that? What does that look like? How do we prove student growth? And is that the sort of thing, along with receipts, would we upload that digitally, or would we mail in physical copies of things?
Well, you get the easy questions.
He thinks I'm taking the easy questions. So we use some interesting words, right, as you read the legislation, that portfolio of evidence of learning and academic growth. So the important thing is the cost that you're paying, it has to cover academic instruction. So it has to cover those 4 core subject areas. So think about, do you have report cards? Do you have projects that your kids have worked on? Do you have, something from a teacher talking about, what your students have learned over the year, what areas they need to grow in? So it has to, in order, if you're thinking about what type of things you might want to retain as information as a parent, report cards in my mind and any documentation written from the school would be what I would keep to demonstrate that, yeah, my kids took at a minimum those 4 core areas of academic instruction. And, it may include more than that, and that's okay. It may have other things. But part of the intent for not limiting the program was knowing that, again, this isn't just about private schools. And also, we know the things that exist today, but we don't know what type of learning opportunities or educational models could exist in the future. So we didn't want to constrain the types of options that families may choose to explore. So that would be my best advice. And in terms of uploading or mailing into the tax commission, this has been one of those things we've had an ongoing conversation with the tax commission. Typically, a tax credit, if you meet the minimum qualifications or, the qualifications, the tax commission would say, great, go forth. And then you, as the taxpayer, just like you do every year when you file your taxes, you keep all your records for a certain period of time in case you might be audited. The tax commission has been telling families that they're going to need to submit these things up front. We had felt a little differently and didn't think the law was crafted that way. They've interpreted differently. So we're still having some ongoing conversation with the tax commission. So I'm not sure about that. I would say is a little unclear yet in terms of how a parent might be required to submit it. So I hope that at least gives some direction.
Okay, so my question is, in the presentation that you had was on a first come, I'm Sherry, I live in Ada County, sorry. First come, first serve. However, the prioritization is on income. So January 15th comes, everybody's gonna upload it, and it's going to be evaluated until April. Is it really first come, first serve? Or is it really income? Or is it, how is that actually being deciphered? Where is the clarity on that?
So the first come, first serve doesn't really come into play until we look at income first. So income, that's the prioritization. That takes priority over if I applied first and my income's 500% of federal poverty. Great, I applied first. But if there's 20,000 people who have income lower than me at the less than the 300,000, they're prioritized above me. So the first come, first serve does come into play, but that's after low income gets that prioritization. That's where we wanted to focus on. And again, we've heard from people here who've made sacrifices to get their kids into private school, and they're not all uber rich, right? These are people who have made sacrifices, who have taken 2 jobs, who've done whatever they've had to do to get their kids there, and that's great, and we love that. Not everybody can do that. You may have a single mom, or you may have everybody's situation is unique, and so that's why this program existed, specifically because we wanted to give everybody that same opportunity, because sometimes that just doesn't fit for somebody else. So yes, the prioritization comes that way. Now, the second time, though, prioritization comes is in year 2. And the reason that we have prioritization for those people who are already in the program, for example, let's say that you decide to take your kid, I really want to check out this private school, but I couldn't afford it. Now I can. So you pull your kid out and you put them in the school and you love it there. Well, you file next year and lo and behold, you were number 2001 and only 2,000 got in. And you're like, well, crud, now I got to move my kid again back to the other school. And we didn't want people to have to do that. We wanted to make sure that once you're in, then you can go ahead and stay in. And so again, there's 2 prioritizations before you even get to first come, first serve. Really, it's income, and then the second year would be for those people already in the program as well. Did that answer?
Great, very clear. Thank you. And then what is it? So it opens on the 15th, and when does it close?
So March 15th is when it closes for the initial filing. And the tax commission then within 30 days will give you a notification that you're in or out. If there is additional funding available after that, again, we don't know. Typically, just if you look across the country where these programs have been implemented, you see approximately 2% utilization. That's the increases every year as far as what we see. So again, it would be a pleasant surprise to see all of it immediately, but I honestly don't think so. If you look across the country as far as where they have been implemented in, you just don't have those numbers to where initially it does it. So again, but they will open the period back up. That was my point. So after that, April 15th, they'll open it back up and they'll say, hey, by the way, we do have additional funding here, so people can go ahead and apply for that at that time as well. So it's not a one and done. And I just wanted to touch base. If I missed the question, I only heard as far as what are we doing for special needs. I didn't hear the whole question as far as are we requiring all schools to follow those guidelines. So I didn't dodge that question. I just didn't hear that part of it. But I would just add on to that, we don't want our micro schools, our home schools, and our private schools to look like public schools. So we're not requiring them to do all of the exact same things that we require public schools to do. And so that was the reason why, whether you may not like that, but that was just the rationale behind it. So that's why I wanted to just say.
Hi, my name is Sammy, and I live in Canyon County, and I run a micro school, and we have several families that could really benefit from this program. And so we're pretty familiar with, the reimbursements and things for curriculum. I just have some questions about the qualifying things. So for curriculum, are there additional qualifying rules like Christian versus non-Christian, or is it like I bought a science book and it doesn't matter what science book? And then as far as tutoring, where does the micro school fall? Because I heard you say private school tuition had to be accredited. So where does the micro school fall in this category? And then how do our families document the proof? So is it just receipts for tuition that they pay for our program? Is it uniforms? Is it books? Is it lab fees? Like, is it all encompassing? Because some of them are really concerned that they won't qualify and they'll pull their funding from other places, like online charters and things like that, and then not qualify and then kind of be stuck with having to front the bill. Another part of my question, you mentioned about them getting to have the money on the front side. So we service a lot of families that are two-income households. They do sacrifice to pay to be in our program so that their kids don't go to public school. They pay for the type of education that they're getting with us. And so they're really concerned, just where that money is going to come from. So, they sacrifice and they want their reimbursements. But if they don't have the money to get the money on the front side, how do they apply for that?
There was a lot there, and I'm going to miss like half of what you asked about. And so I apologize that I'm not getting to all of those. And maybe Lori can. Yeah.
How will families apply for the money on the front side instead of getting reimbursed?
So micro schools, micro pods, whatever we call them. If my child was attending your micro school, I'm assuming I have a tuition or some kind of fee. That tuition or that fee would qualify as an eligible expense, and so then I could count that as an expense. Now, if you personally have a child that's going to that school, you would not be able to qualify for that expense for you to charge yourself to educate them. But if you had books, lab fees, that kind of stuff would qualify as eligible expenses. And so that was one thing we were really adamant about, and wanted to make sure that homeschool, micro schools, micro pods, that was included in this list. The only difference is if you're not accredited, then you would have to make sure that you are covering the core teaching requirements, right? And so there would have to be some documentation. I would assume that you are doing something like that. The second question that I will touch on, and maybe Lori will have to correct me here if she needs to on that, is on the advanced tax credit or the advanced payment on that. And so what that is, again, knowing that somebody just may not be able to qualify. Maybe they're at federal poverty. They're not even 300% of federal poverty. They're at federal poverty and they really want to take advantage of it. They can't even front the money from September until they get their tax return and qualify for that. They can't front that money. We recognize that. So we allow an advanced payment. So that's when you can apply for that, and the tax commission will notify you whether or not you get that for this next school year starting in September. Essentially, you could apply for that, and if you did qualify for that, that gives you the money up front, and then the next tax year, you would go ahead and apply for the regular tax credit, and you get that funding to pay for the next year. And so that was one of the things that we did envision, that people just couldn't even front the money up front, and we wanted to make sure that they had those opportunities. And so we originally looked at capping to how much that was, and then we decided, why would we do that? I think that was a consensus, that if everybody that applies is somebody who needs the advanced tax credit, then great, that's, you know, mission accomplished, and we move on. So same time frame. Yeah, same time frame. So January 15th, I guess, is when you'd want to apply. Again, you can't apply for the advanced payment for this year's school, whereas you can apply for the tax credit for the current year going on right now. So the advanced one would be truly in the next year. Lori's going to try to help with that question, and if there was other things I missed, sorry.
And certainly the advance payment will have more questions. I know the tax commission has been working on answering those questions too. So when a family would apply for the advance payment, they have to estimate their expected expenses. So I'm going to make up a number. I have no idea what the cost is to attend your micro school, but if, let's say it's $3,000, they need to indicate in their application to the tax commission what they anticipate their expenses to be, because it's the advance payment. So if they anticipate their expenses to be $3,000, that's what they need to apply for, not $5,000. And with the advance payment, then the next tax year, they would need to demonstrate what their actual expenses were. And if it was less, then they would have to repay. And if it was more, then they could qualify more under the tax credit. As far as tutoring, this is so you asked about textbooks. No, it doesn't specify curriculum. The really important part to remember is that the law has this definition of academic instruction, which is kindergarten through grade 12, that includes at a minimum English language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies. So your school has to cover at a minimum those 4 subject areas. And the same would be true for curriculum. And so tutoring, the way tutoring interplays with that, and there's all kinds of ways kids get tutoring, right? Sometimes they hire a teacher on the side, sometimes, you know, they're paying a friend, sometimes, again, you have to, I just called my niece in a panic to see if she could tutor my daughter in economics because she's struggling. In my mind, economics wouldn't count as a tutoring because it doesn't meet the 4 core academic areas. And we have professional, I think there's like the Lee Pesky Learning Center. I'm not making a pitch for any particular place, but there are professional business locations that offer tutoring services. So think about the interplay between the academic, those 4 core areas of academic instruction, and the other qualifying expenses, I think is a good way. And then the best, again, for documentation, like as a school, it would be important to make sure like your invoices to families are clear in terms of what they're paying for. And then because this is coming up, this question hasn't come up here, but it's come up in other areas. We had a prior program, the Empowering Parents program, which was more expansive in the list of eligible expenses. Think about this tax credit as much, much more narrow. So this doesn't cover things like ballet, it doesn't cover extracurriculars, doesn't cover like ballet or music, so you couldn't count like your music lesson as tutoring. Does that make sense? So think about it has to be those areas of academic instruction.
My name is Jean and I'm from STAR. I have a niece she takes her parenting responsibility very seriously. And she asked me the other day whether or not the private schools that she looks into for her 1 special needs and 2 other children, since they don't necessarily have the same certification, teacher certification, that a public school would have, if they would be willing to allow her to look at resumes. And so I guess this is a question for you, Joey, or for in Idaho, are private and religious schools, are they open to having parents interview individual teachers or look at their resumes or find out what their qualifications are?
I could speak for I could speak for my school in particular. It's a pretty open process in terms of like families have an opportunity to come in and tour the school. If they specifically in that, so like we have we've given it the name, the Learning Commons, but an area where we're serving some kids with certain types of learning disabilities and issues. So they're serving, I know my niece was a part of it. And so I think if a parent asks those questions, I would think the administration and the teachers would be more than willing. I can't speak for all schools, but would be more than willing to share resume and the types of certifications either that they do or don't have. And I would think that would be pretty specific to each individual school. I couldn't speak for the other schools.
I would just briefly add, if they're not willing, then go somewhere else, because that would be a red flag to me. That's the beauty of this program. We're not requiring you to go to any specific place, and frankly, that's what improves everything. Whether you go to store A or store B, you go to the one that you think gives you the best service, and that's what we would expect here, especially with those private schools. I can't imagine one that would say, no, we're not going to share anything with you. And if they did, great. Then I guess just move on and go find one that will, because there are plenty that will do that. So that's what my recommendation would be. If they're not willing to share, standardized testing, that comes up all the time, right? Most private schools, I did a research here, most of them here in Idaho all do some form of standardized testing, almost all. And if you wanted a specific testing done, go to that school that does whatever testing that is that you like. And if they don't, find a different one, because I think the options are unlimited.
I'll just say really quickly, sorry, because there's a lot of local questions, which is great. Just again, to give a national perspective, so you know that these things aren't, crazy. The most popular form of choice nationally is homeschooling and microschooling. In Arizona and Florida and a few other states like West Virginia, a lot of those micro schools are started by former public school teachers. In fact, in Florida, a former teacher of the year has a micro school. So it's really kind of cool and innovative because they get to do more things that they wouldn't be able to do in a public school. But I would say, yeah, I definitely ask about what the credentials are and what they do in that school.
So we'll go right here and then back to the mom in the checkered shirt.
I've been waiting. Is your arm tired?
Boise. Representative Mulch, I wanted to go back about funding public schools because we have about $80 or $100 million of underfunding in our special ed classes. There's all kinds of levies that school districts have to run every year to be able to afford to stay open. And there's $1 to $2 billion worth of facilities funding that we're behind. So how can we afford a program like this? And in any other state that started something like this, the budget just exploded. It's capped at $50 million, but there's lots of talk about expanding it. So how can we afford it, and is this constitutional?
Oh. So we know the folks that came here not to ask questions about how to implement the program, but wanted to be critical of it. But you answer your question. A couple things. One, you asked about funding for schools, and I'll tell you what I specifically have been working on personally. And a number of years ago, and I know this is a long answer, but it takes a long answer to get to understand what the goal is. So over the years, this legislature has been asked to deal with property tax. And again, the state gets $0 of property tax money. We get none of it. We don't levy any of it. We don't get any of it. That's all locally assessed. Okay, just so everybody understands that. If you look across the state, averages, again, this is kind of rough numbers, about 30% of it comes from your cities, about 30% comes from your counties, about 30% comes from some form of school bond or levy. Now, You can go to Eastern Idaho and schools is up to 50% of some of that. You can go to other places that's less. So those are just rough numbers. So when we were asked to address the property tax issue, I personally thought, and people that I worked on with the legislation, that if the state is going to get involved in addressing property tax, again, local issue, then we should do it on the one issue that we actually have a responsibility for as a state, and that is the schools. So we created a bill, House Bill 292. I was one of the authors and carried it on the floor, and that bill, it is a property tax relief bill. However, the money that we are providing the state are used to offset those bonds and levies. Now, some of the school districts said, well, that doesn't help us at all. We just got the money from a different pocket. And you're right. Initially, that is how it's set up. But stated on the floor, and every time I get an opportunity to talk about House Bill 292, I will tell you, we have added more money into that every year. And the way that money goes in is it first is required to be used to pay down bonds and levies. After that, the money goes, if there's more money, that money goes directly to the school districts. The very first time we did this, we didn't have as much money into that formula. And so you only had about 5 school districts who got money. Now, again, this was a property tax relief bill. It was not a school funding bill. But we set it up knowing that we were going to be able to use this to fund schools. So last year, we were able to stick more money into it. The year before, we stuck more money into that. And so now you got about 20 different school districts that are receiving money from that particular program that are going directly to be used for, they can bond off of it. They can actually do their own bonds off of this revenue source because it is a sales tax. Anyway, from a bonding standpoint, it's a really good source for them to do it. Or they can use it for maintenance or whatever they happen to need. The goal, and I've stated this goal is that the state will go ahead and pay for all of the schools. So that's the goal on how to get there. Now, we can't get there overnight, but we have dumped in a lot of money into that program, and it is coming out to the other side. There is 2 sides of that bill. One goes to pay property taxes a little bit differently. We're trying to get all of that to go into the school side of it because more schools will benefit from it that way. And we're not too far away to where the state, we're not far away. Using both of those funding sources to be able to pay for all bonds and levies, and then set up a program similar to what we do with our public works type programs, to where we have a list of these are what we need, these are the buildings we need. We would do the same thing. These are the schools we need, these are the renovations we need, and the state goes ahead and covers that. That's one of the things that we're working on to try to help with the school side of it. Does that solve your immediate problem? No, and I'm not claiming that it does. But to answer the question is, what are we doing? That's what we're doing. We're dumping a lot of money into that. That's on top of, or separate from, the $1 billion that we put in last year specifically for facilities. Again, completely on top of anything that we did with the school funding formula. And so I think the legislature has made great strides, and I'll put us up against any other state. When you look at the percentage of money that we have and the percent of money that we have that we give to education, we are in the top. Now, we are a poorer state, and we don't have the resources that some of these other schools, these states have. And so if you look at total dollars per kid, yeah, we're towards the bottom. But I would say, if your judge of education is how much dollars we spend on our kids, then I'm going to argue that we should be looking at what our results, and Idaho's results are fantastic. We do one of the best jobs of educating our kids with the money that we have, bar none. If you look at dollars and results, we do a fantastic job. If you think that just dollars is what matters for education, then we need to look at some studies, and we will show you that those school districts that have the most dollars actually perform the lowest across the country. So we can also, so dollars does not necessarily mean education. Does that mean that we're satisfied and we're happy? No. And that's why you've seen concerted efforts every year to increase those funding. Since I've been there, since Lori's been there, it has always taken the lion's share of every budget that we put out has gone to education. I don't see that changing. We have a cap on this. Oh, the other thing, the only people talking about this program ballooning are those who oppose it. Nobody who crafted the legislation, nobody who pushed for the legislation has asked for a penny more and said we wouldn't. We don't even know how many people are going to use this for a couple of years. We won't even know. And so to say that it's going to balloon or we're going to even ask for money before the program's even been put in is not accurate. And we just aren't. And so there was more questions I know, and I don't think I hit them all.
Let me just briefly address the constitutional issue.
Yeah,
there's no question this program is constitutional. There has never been a school choice tax credit in any other state that has been ruled unconstitutional. The state constitution in Idaho is very clear that you have to have a uniform thorough system, but that is a floor. It is not a ceiling. That's basically just saying what the state has to provide. It does not, as the West Virginia Supreme Court, prevent the legislature from adopting more things on top of that. That is a case that is very clear when you look at the results. And in fact, in the Georgia Supreme Court, when this came up for a challenge, the Georgia Supreme Court ruled it constitutional and said there is just as good of a chance that this would actually save the state money as it would increase in balloon. So.
My name is Cindy, and I live in Boise. I am a retired public educator and a single mom, and I sent my kids to a private school. I take offense to what you said up there when people clap because they were voicing their opinion. I am not for vouchers, but I am here to learn about it, and I think that was very condescending when you said, I can tell why the people are here. My kids are graduated, they taught in public schools and private schools, and so I think that was just kind of, I'm gonna kind of go off on what you need to. I just think that wasn't fair for all the people who came to hear what you had to say. I do have something a couple of things. One is I was listening to the news or read something, and same way with a kid from Eagle, the young person from Eagle, who said, can the money be used for out of state? I think that is very wrong. My tax dollars are already going to something that I don't think, that I didn't want, but now you're taking my tax dollars to paying for a Seattle or Gonzaga prep or something. Pay Bishop Kelly, pay Eastern Idaho Catholic schools, pay those. But taking our money out of state, I don't think that's right. And that I do think it's important, and I would like to have a commitment from you guys to say 50 million is the max. Yes, we are worried. I was a public school teacher for 33 years. We are worried about funding. We do have to meet a certain level. And I have nothing against homeschool people. I have nothing against private schools. Like I said, I sent my kids where it was best for me and my kids. But I was a public school teacher. Can you promise you're not going to raise it past $50 million? Can you make a promise to us right now?
Never make promises.
So what I can tell you, first of all, our intention is not to be condescending, but we do want to be clear that the intention of the town hall is to try to answer questions for families who are trying to apply for the program. So first of all, thank you for your service as a public educator. We appreciate it. Been in a lot of classrooms and know it's not an easy job, no matter where you're educating kids. There's a reason I'm not homeschooling my children. I wasn't cut out for that. And in terms of, this is something every individual legislator will have to ask for themselves. So I'll talk about the structure of the law that we passed. So we capped it at 50 million. If it were to be increased in the future, it would have to go back through the entire legislative process, which involves all 105 of us. And that looks different every 2 years. We had, I think, over 40%, 31 out of 70 changed in the House with the last election cycle. And I think in the Senate, we were about 12 or 13 out of 35 changeover in the Senate. So every 2 years, it looks very different in what people's opinions are and what they look like. But what I can tell you is and then structurally, we are asking the tax commission to keep a wait list. So if more families apply than there's funding for, the legislation states that the tax commission is required to keep a wait list. So that will give us data and information to understand what the demand might be, what the income levels of families might be, and like everything that's put into law, it's subject to the possibility of a future legislature making a different decision. So can I stand here in front of you today and tell you that it will never increase? No, I can't say that. What I can tell you is that, like anything, different than, and this is why I had addressed, we've talked about things like Medicaid, we haven't touched on prisons, but there are things that the state is obligated to pay regardless of what the bills come in for. Fire suppression is another one, right? When we fight fires, we don't know what it's going to cost every year. We just know that when that bill comes, we have to pay it. Structurally, this program is very, very different from that. So the state cannot award more than $50 million based on the law, no matter the demand. And if there is more demand than the $50 million, that would be a consideration for a future legislature. I don't know how long I'm going to be serving in the legislature, frankly. I've been there 11 years. I've been a proud supporter of all types of school choice. I've supported public charter schools, advanced opportunities programs, Learn Everywhere, where kids get credit for learning outside the classroom. So I'm frankly agnostic to the type of learning and education opportunities, but just want to make sure that all Idaho kids can figure out and their parents can figure out what works best for them.
And we just one more real quick here, because we're up against the time limit, and we want to make sure we have time and respect your time as well. Just to add on to what the senator said, there's also a possibility that the program could go down to zero in 2 years. A new legislature could come in, and a new legislature could decide not to fund it. So it can work both ways. We promised that we would be out of here and get you home after 8 o'clock. We are at 8:01 right now. And so we are going to wrap things up. I believe our three panelists will stick around at least for a few minutes, and they can answer any more questions that you might have. And again, go to idahokidswin.com. If you have more questions, you can submit them there, and we'll try to answer them as quickly as we possibly can. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate our panelists as well. And make sure you grab any more materials off of the table before you leave. Thank you.
I'm just going to say, we're already sending money